Is this too sensitive?
I'm happy to talk about it, but
Okay.
I do get emotional. I feel like I had a full mental breakdown. I realized I had been upholding this identity. I was actually going insane.
Jinti Fell is a mother, a world traveler, and content creator who first began documenting her life nearly a decade ago on her YouTube channel.
At that time, Jinti and her partner Chris made the bold decision to step back from their careers and take their family on a completely new journey.
We ended up selling everything and getting a Ford Transit van.
Since then, Jinti has welcomed 4 beautiful children into the world, a journey that not only saw her family grow, but also led to an expansion of her intuition.
I was going through my pregnancy completely outside the medical system.
In 2020, Jinti and her family were about to embark on a world trip, but as we all know, the world shut down, forcing them to return to Australia.
So it's been 5 years. What happened to Jinti's YouTube channel? It was my favorite YouTube channel. I miss her. What happened to her?
We're about to find out.
The whole reason I started what I started was because I wanted to lead by example. And here I was not doing that. Let's just completely stop. Can you cancel everything? I just remember being
We're sitting down with Jinti in Australia to bring us up to speed on what's been happening in her life since she last uploaded and the profound perspective shift she's experienced.
There felt like this big block around my creative energy, my sexual energy. I was well, let's explore our sexuality, our relationship. I said to Chris, there is no way we didn't just make a baby.
Wow.
And he's yeah.
You can shut it all down now. A lot of people get stuck in this pattern of thinking about money.
I've never been the same since then.
The spark hasn't been there. So be sure to stay tuned to the end of this episode to find out how Jinti's bringing more abundance into her life and her advice for how we do the same.
Enjoy our conversation with our new friend, Jinti Fell. I guess we should just open it up with a hello, welcome to the pod. And when I genuinely tune in, there are so few creators who I have loved being a part of their life. You're just one of those people for me, genuinely. You've never made me feel, and this is obviously my own work, but that I'm comparing myself or being judged, or you are just this really open, really authentic, very beautiful presence online. And I've missed you. Where did you go? What happened? One of the last videos you posted was, you had wanted to manifest this 500,000 subscribers, live in a van, and it be your dream life, so to speak, but that you were sort of struggling. And then I feel like we never really got much. What's happening for you? I just miss you.
Oh, firstly, I feel so honored to be here with you both. And I was so hesitant to do this just because I'm it's a lot to be away from the kids and things like that. And I actually listened to a couple of episodes of this podcast because I'm not really familiar with your YouTube channel. I have seen bits and pieces and things like that. And so when I was listening to you both speaking, I was so inspired, and I would go away after listening to Chris. I'm I love them so much. I would be crying and laughing and just feeling just your love and everything that you have to share. So I was I want to connect with you guys. So it feels so nice to be able to do that. But to answer your question, what happened the past 5 years?
2 more babies,
I had maybe we should talk about the lead up, because it wasn't there was quite a few different things going on that I suppose led to just stepping away from being on YouTube. And then I was offline for quite a while, and I'm back online in Instagram and bits and pieces and stuff like that. So, but yeah, it's been 5 years that we have posted a video, I think. And it sort of began for us. Chris was studying and working full time, and I'd just become a mum. And I remember I was sort of staying at home a lot, just the very normal sort of life. And I remember just thinking, oh, there has to be more than this. And I'd be at home with my daughter all day and I loved it. I loved her. It was great. We lived by the beach, but I just wanted something different. And I remember one day I used to use YouTube just to listen to music. I didn't even know about vlogging, about channels, nothing. And I was listening to music and it was suggested someone's video to me. And I sort of discovered this whole world where people just shared about their lives and made it into a job for them. And they got to be together and sort of just live life more on their own terms. And I was like, well, sign me up. Like, yes, I'm going to do that. That sounds, I've always sort of loved sharing bits and pieces and documenting things. And that sort of coincided with my daughter. She was probably about 6 months old. And I remember thinking like, oh, I was obsessed with her. I just loved her so much. And she was just so amazing. And I just thought like, I want to like be whoever she needs in this life. Like I want to like give her everything. And yeah, I sort of was noticing she just watched everything we did. Like I could tell her like, go out, go after your dreams. You're amazing. Like do it. But what would be more impactful would be like if I did that for myself and then she got to see that because she is just watching everything we do. And I was like, well, I need to become that and like lead by example for my kids. And so it started this whole thing. Yeah, we ended up selling everything and like leaving the careers we were pursuing and selling our family car, getting a Ford Transit van. And we moved into it and it was like your van setup is just like, it's like a little mansion, beautiful, like on wheels.
Okay. Which van is she looking at? I don't know.
Well, I've seen.
Well, we had running water and power and.
We had an esky.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we would lay in that van at night and just be like, this is.
Living the dream.
We are living the actual dream. This is.
Isn't that such a great feeling though? Yeah.
Yeah. Like we couldn't ask for anything more than someone. I'm just like every night, just like, yes, this is the best. Just a little family cruising around. And so yeah, we started making videos and I thought, obviously no one will ever watch these. And I remember even it didn't take long. I think at the time when we started YouTube, we didn't know anyone else sort of traveling like that. Particularly families. And I remember one of our videos got like 300 views in a week or something. And I was like, oh no, like 300 people, Chris, this is like popping off. Like this is crazy. Yeah. And then, yeah, we sort of went from there and I loved it. We loved it. And then all of a sudden, it became really hard. And I think lots contributed to that. Yeah. Should I go into?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. What do you mean? Like you obviously started growing the channel. You started having more people weigh in on your life. You started making money, so there was obviously like a financial burden, like all of these things. It became
maybe not even
business.
a burden, but when it becomes a business, sometimes I think if you're creative and if you're doing it from your heart and then like there's a deadline or the brand needs to approve it or it can lose the magic of the creating for creating's sake sometimes,
Plus, I think there's something really
Look
interesting.
At us just inserting all of our ideas into why it was hard for you, but I know
like
we
probably
feeling.
had really similar experiences at different times.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, plus the family thing, right? Is I think that's a whole other blurry side of it is, and I'm just speaking based on my thoughts, but you now have a child involved and you're kind of questioning like, am I filming her to please the audience or am I trying to get her to do something she wouldn't normally do, or where do you draw that line? Are those feelings that you had?
Those were two of the main things that were coming into play for me. But I think on a deeper level, probably I had put a lot of my self-worth into my achievements or how I performed or, even how liked I was. Like I wanted to please, I found comfort and safety there. And I think a lot of my schooling experience contributed to that sort of belief system where I was like, well, if I'm just like do my best and like achieve and always striving, then that's it. Like that's what we do in life. That's successful, right? And I think with the YouTube channel, I, for one, was just having so much external feedback coming at me. And like I would like to say, I wasn't going to sleep at night thinking about it necessarily, but I think over time I lost a sense of like who I was, and I was diluting everything. Like I didn't want to say anything that would offend someone else, or like I didn't want to appear to be a certain way. And I just was like, well, who am I now? Like what is going on? I just feel like I lost a sense of myself. Like I didn't have a strength or this clarity of like, this is me and standing strong in me. And so as it grew and more things happened, I feel like that came into play exactly about like our daughter. We were starting to be recognized in places that we went. People would know her name, like they would. And I was like, whoa, this is like something we should consider more. And because like at the start, it was just so carefree. I was like, I thought Chris's parents would watch, my parents would watch. They loved it. They loved watching. They're probably like, still wish we did it. But
they're just the 300 views watching over and over and over.
like,
Popping
Mom,
off.
Dad, Mom and Dad.
Got multiple devices going.
Like, absolutely. And then, so yeah, I was really considering that whole side of thing. And I don't want to be like complete, you know, we would title some of our videos, they were like, it was family centered, it involved our child, and things like that. And I just started questioning that. And I think I would look back now and be like, oh, I was like burning out. And I was sort of just slowly forced to stop. There were a few things that sort of like highlighted that for me. Basically, the reasons that I had started was just like to express myself and to go on this adventure and to share our story. And it got to this place where I can see that perseverance and discipline and things like that are really important and they're a part of it. But also it got to the point where I just felt like I was forcing something that wasn't meant to be anymore. And I needed to step back, but it's complicated as well. Like I remember the day, because at this stage, like our YouTube channel was financially providing for all of our travels, our lives and stuff like that. And we were in New Zealand when COVID began, and we were flying to San Francisco, and we were at like we're somewhere in New Zealand, like in the snow, like hiking in a national park, just loving life. And someone was like talking to us. She also has a YouTube channel anyway. And she was like, so like this COVID thing, what's going on? Like I'm going to have to fly home. And we were thinking like, what is she talking about? Like, I was thinking like this girl is very dramatic. Like it's like she needs to calm down. Like she's going to fly home for this. She's be fine. And then we sort of went back into reception. I remember my dad had sent me a message and he's like, no, like, what are you guys thinking? And so instead of flying to the States, we flew back to Australia. And we were going on this big round the world trip with my two kids at this stage. And so we ended up flying back to Australia, and I'd found it a lot easier to share when we were traveling. And I love going to new places. Just, I think it's like the most beautiful thing in the world, just to see something new. And so I feel
and to share it. There's something about, we're finding that too now, is like when we were at home trying to make videos, they just didn't feel as
it was forced.
Natural. And when we're out traveling, we're discovering it with the lens. So I definitely relate to that.
Yes, and your genuine appreciation is felt.
Yeah.
Whereas like if I'm just making a meal at home, like I don't want to set my it doesn't just no.
Totally.
And so coming back to Australia, it was again, well, I'm really not feeling inspired to create videos to share this is hard, and just why can't I speak? That's what it felt like. I had nothing to say. I just lost my voice. So it was like this point where, oh, I have to stop. There's this done. And I always thought, oh, maybe I'll have a 6-month break. And we had a guy who was amazing who used to manage like ads and stuff like on our channel. And yeah, one day I just wrote to him and I was like, oh, like just everything, like let's just completely stop. Like, can you cancel everything? I just remember being like, oh, like, okay.
Like it's obviously the right decision when there's so much relief in that.
Yeah.
Right?
There was relief, as I feel like I'm pretty intuitive, and I was like,
yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
But there was also this whole pressure of, well, working.
Yeah.
We were now living back in Australia. We got a place because of COVID. And so, you know, all travel where we landed, we ended up staying for 2.5 years. So
I've been in an epic routine of hydration these past 2 months, thanks to our podcast sponsor, Element. Thank you. And don't I look glowing because of it?
You look amazing.
Thank you.
We've all heard that we should be drinking a glass of water per day.
8 glasses, not a glass.
Does that say 8? Yeah. 8 glasses of water today. But the truth is, hydration isn't about just drinking water. I didn't know that, but now you know it as well. It's about water and electrolytes.
It makes sense. You lose both water and sodium when you sweat, and both are needed to be replaced to prevent muscle cramps, headaches, and energy dips. So often you think you're dehydrated, and those symptoms that we call dehydration are this mix of losing electrolytes and water. Drinking beyond thirst is actually a bad idea because it dilutes blood electrolyte levels, which leads to the headaches, low energy, cramps, confusion, or worse. So the solution isn't to stop drinking water. It's just to drink water and electrolytes. I think I talk about it a lot, but I've been really into my gym. It's this hot room, which is a mix of HIIT and Pilates style classes. And the amount of salty sweat that pours off of me is wild. And now that I understand how to rehydrate, I feel like I'm having more success at the gym. I'm feeling better post-gym.
Plus, it's delicious.
Okay.
I just love drinking it.
I'm obsessed with chili mango, watermelon salt, raspberry salt, citrus salt. The orange salt's good.
They don't make a bad flavor.
Honestly, they're so good.
Element was created by former research biochemist Rob Wolf and Keto Gains founder Louise Villaseñor. Element has enough sodium, potassium, and magnesium to get you feeling your best and performing your best.
Element has 0 sugar, artificial colors, or other dodgy ingredients to hold you back. You are guaranteed to find a flavor you're going to love, and there's just win, 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 win. So they came up with a fantastic offer for us. You just go to drinklmnt.com/reroot. You get a free sample pack with any purchase when you go to that link. Don't be confused or lame like me and call it LMNT. It is Element, but it is spelt drinklmnt.com/reroot. Check them out.
Back to the show. I mean, you've kind of skimmed over it, but I feel like a lot of creators can relate to this, you know? But when it comes down to it, not everyone has the balls to do that because the opportunity is presenting itself constantly, right? Your channel's growing, the brand deals are coming, and for you to just write that, like, what was that? Was that like just something you had inside you? Was Chris fully in alignment with that?
It actually, the feeling,
because it was your full-time job, right?
Yeah, I filmed the videos. Chris got them from me filming them to posted. It had actually started around when the year prior, when we had conceived our son. I went through this sort of dark night of the soul time in my life and we were doing YouTube at the time. So it was also interesting because I was like documenting up until that point. I was like, I can't believe this actually worked. Like, this is amazing. Like, we're doing it. Yay. And then we were in Indonesia and I started feeling low, like this energy I couldn't muster. And we came back to Australia and got this beautiful place for the winter. And I feel like I had a full like mental breakdown, which was actually like a full spiritual awakening where I realized I had been upholding this like identity, this is who I am, just full speed ahead, this is me. And I started realizing that it was like almost a mask. It wasn't conscious. Like I was like, this is who I am. It like, I couldn't uphold it anymore. And it was just like my whole identity started crumbling. Like I was actually like, oh, I'm going insane. Like this is, and so I was
You
like,
didn't feel like it was who you were?
yeah, it was what
you felt like you had to be a certain person?
Yeah. I felt like in this experience, I fully was like, how do I be a person and how do I be me? And who even am I? And everything felt like I had like an act, like a performance. I was meditating a lot at the time, and I just was just like, I'm just going to trust this and take time for myself and like really nourish myself. And I would just like lay under the stars at night. And I what I sort of discovered was being like the flame inside of myself was out, and I was like fighting for my life to keep this fire going, but it was already out, and I needed to just like stop and actually like return to yes. And so I went on this. Then since then, Chris like talks about that. He's like, that winter was like everything changed, and he thought then, oh, like she won't do we won't do YouTube anymore. It's like, no, we ended up, getting a bus and like continuing our travels, but like that was a significant thing for me. So something that I'd really created, which was completely genuine, and where I was at in my life felt like all of a sudden, oh, this is taking a lot more energy, maybe like to be that person. And then I don't feel like I had the strength to just fully be open and seen as where I was at now. Does that make sense?
No, 1,000%. I'm wondering if there was a catalyst to your dark night of the soul, like, or was it just one moment you just realized like, whoa, I don't have any energy? Like, how does that come to be?
Can you take us into that literal day? Like, was there a comment you read or something triggered you?
It wasn't a single moment or a day. It was just, I think I needed to stop. And we had been traveling, and like I actually was just like ground down and just be here for a little while instead of just trying to like push and keep pushing, because even in just small ways, anything with YouTube, it is like, it can easily be, I should say, like you're striving for more and nothing's ever like quite enough. And I must have like gotten into that a little bit. I think having exactly what we wanted for this to financially provide for us as well, but then having this like that as well felt like an additional stress.
Well, that never goes away too.
Yeah.
Like we have friends that have multi-million channels and they're making more money than you'd believe, and they still feel the same way. Like I just don't think, we've got a financial person that helps us out with our money, and I'm asking him about, security. Like, do you ever hit a point where you're like, oh, I'm good?
Yeah.
And for some reason, humans don't do that. Right? It is, I don't know if it's the ego or what part of the brain it is, but it takes a lot of work to feel content and feel abundant.
So much rewiring of your brain. Or
Yeah.
at least for me, like especially when it comes to money and finances and the abundance. And I've heard you talk about this, and I want to get into all of it because I think it's such incredible topics to talk about, like law of attraction and thinking you want abundance, but actually not being energetically a match for it at all. And you're like, I want to be abundant. I want to and like kind of having the mantra, but like energetically you're saying like, keep it away. It's such an interesting thing. So I don't know. I kind of went on a side.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Through my life experience, it's something that will never naturally happen to you. It needs to be like a mind shift.
As you were speaking, I sort of just had this memory about all of this, and I realized like even that always striving for more, like it is a very masculine energy to always like be going after it. And I felt like I needed to discover like who I was and like the strength in my femininity, where I'd place so much of my worth in these masculine traits of like, and always, you know, like wanting to achieve and the doing instead of just like the being. And I feel like that was probably, you know, I thought I had to make it happen instead of being like more receptive. And I think it crushed a bit of my spirit. Like I needed to stop and see that.
Chris seems like a really wonderful human. I know he's not here to speak for himself, but I'm just curious, like at that point, you know, it's one thing for you to have a dark night of the soul moment and be like, look, babe, I'm shutting it all down. What was his response to that? Was he just supportive?
He asks because I've had my own dark night of the soul. And I think it's important that you have someone to, I just feel like you've been 5 years ahead of me for a long time. I think we're the same age. Are you a 90 baby?
Yes.
Same.
Wow. Okay,
but you feel like a spiritual teacher for me. And I don't want to like put that on you. And I don't want it to be like a big thing. But what you've talked about, like, I remember watching you have a meditation practice long before. I was like, that's cool. It's really cool. You know, it's like, it's not for me. It's really cool that she does that. And now I'm like so deep in it. Or you talking about abundance and rewiring and law of attraction and all these things. And I was so open because it was coming from you, but it was like not for me. But here I am like 5 years after you and 5 years probably after your dark night of the soul having my own. That was maybe forced upon me in a different way.
Well, also, how interesting is it that she was spiritually a little bit ahead and that she didn't need to go through a disease or a sickness?
Yeah.
Well, that's so interesting that you say that, because I said to Chris, because you asked like how Chris, he just saw it. Like he trusts my intuition, I suppose. But I said to him, if I keep going, I'm going to get really sick. I was like, I have to stop. Like I am getting like, I don't know, like I was getting warning signs in so many ways, like in my body, and I was like, oh, I would have kept
Keep
going,
your body
but I was
in
like,
stress.
I'm actually going to be unwell. So it's funny that not funny that you said that, but yeah, that
but
came
how
up.
Powerful that you listened, because I'm sure my body gave me many, many, many signs before, and I just was like, keep going. And I relate so much to what you're talking about with the masculine energy and the doing, being what you're rewarded for as you grow up, especially in the school system. Like I was just the perfect student, and so much of my identity was tied up into that, to the point where like my early memories as a kid are like getting 8 out of 10 on a spelling test and just crumbling because I couldn't handle it. You really.
I am like, gosh, we have so many
I told you,
similarities.
sister. You didn't know me, but I was watching you. I was drawing you to me.
But back to your question earlier, Chris had gone through his own dark night of the soul before me. So he went first, and that was prior to, that was actually, we were backpacking when I conceived our first daughter, and it was a big surprise. It was the day after my 25th birthday, and we've been camping, sleeping in this little hiking tent we had with, you know, those inflatable mats at the Grand Canyon. And I woke up that morning and I was like, I'm pregnant. It sort of like bubbled up into my awareness, but I didn't want to even I was like, what?
But you didn't take a test. You just knew.
No, I took a test later that day. It was funny. I didn't say.
But before you knew, you woke up knowing.
That morning, I was like, okay.
Wait, you conceived that night and then woke up in the morning?
No.
Oh.
On that little mattress.
I'm
like,
picturing the mattress.
The cells are splitting.
Yeah.
That's.
I'm pregnant this morning. She is so awakened. I'm like, oh.
Chris, we did it.
That's sperm. So I was setting the scene with the tent and the mattress because I just remember unzipping it. And I just felt so sick, and I was like, there is nothing in this world that I can eat right now, and I'm so hungry. And the day before, we had hiked down into the canyon. I thought it was like the fittest I've ever been in my life. I was struggling getting out, and I was like, But anyway, that day I didn't say anything to Chris. We went to a Walmart afterwards as we left the Grand Canyon, and I burst into tears because I wanted organic fruit and vegetables or beans or something. And I just remember him looking at me and being like, should you get a pregnancy test?
Wow.
And I was like, and so, yeah, we found out that day. But that trip, I was went back to that trip because we were slowly making our way to South America, and Chris was going to sit and drink plant medicine because he had
ayahuasca.
Yeah. And yeah, there's a couple of other things going on that he sat in ceremony. And so we were slowly making our way there on this, year-long round the world trip. And he did a lot of healing, I would say, not just in that circle. Like, I think a lot of people can go and drink ayahuasca and like want it to solve all their problems, and I don't think that was certainly not the case. But there were so many things on that trip that just changed our lives, and so he had a lot of empathy and understanding, I think.
Does that answer your question about how to navigate dark nights of the soul for the partner?
Yeah, but sometimes it sounds like, he was ahead of his time a little bit. He was a little bit more open to it.
Yeah. How did you find your way out of that moment? So it sounds like you knew, okay, I need to ground. You were back in Australia. You're continuing a meditation practice, or do you back off a little bit? How do you refine yourself, or like find your way home and then come back? And did it feel, I have so many questions, did it feel authentic when you came back?
I haven't thought about this extensively, but I had a bit of like a God moment where I had a newfound faith that was sort of something that I could lean into, that I actually didn't know, and I didn't have the answers, and it wasn't all my responsibility and on my shoulders, and it was more this like just a surrendering of some sort, I suppose.
Interesting.
Yeah, like just a faith in something more. And I suppose I've always been spiritual, but that was a time that like, whoa, I need something more right now. Like maybe, but also we conceived our son during this period of our lives as well. And so then I slowly came back into myself a bit. I honestly think like I've never been the same since then. And I'm like, that's a good thing. It's just like
beautiful thing.
We think of burnout, say, or just like these real breakdowns as like you don't want that, but there's just so much opportunity that we get to like be reborn, and that actually something needed to die and it wasn't meant to be any longer. And like that was my experience coming out of it.
Wow. I'm just so grateful to be sat with you. It is just not to just keep reflecting my journey onto you, but I feel the exact same way. Like if I hadn't have had all this stuff happen to me, like the gratitude I have for my journey is unbelievable. And the opportunities that have come, and the rebirth of myself, and the coming home to figure out what it all means, and finding God. And I remember following you and you sharing a story saying, like someone asked, you were doing a Q&A, like, do you believe in God? And I was like, whoa, Jinti says she believes in God. Like, does that mean she's Christian? Like, what does that mean for someone I admire? Like I don't believe in God. Like, the word God was like a big word growing up in religion. And like kind of coming out of it and traveling so much and realizing like all these people are kind of talking about the same thing. But when you are religious, it's like, but my way is the way, and I would never want like my spiritual practice to be the way for anyone else. It's just what's working for me, or how I connect to source, or the bigger energy, I don't even know the question, but I guess I want to thank you for sharing that. And I don't know if sometimes when I share, if you were met ever with like negativity or something, just know that what you did and when you were sharing, it was impactful, and it was almost like future me really needed what you were sharing. So thank you.
Oh, wow. That's so nice to hear it as you're speaking, and maybe we resonate in so many areas, because as you talk about these things, and like even coming, and I was like, I just want to meet you guys today because when I hear you speak, I'm so drawn, and I find it just like this like light pouring out, and I'm just like, oh, never stop speaking. That's how I feel. So yeah,
This podcast might go a long time here.
Honestly, no, you can shut it all down now. I'm like, wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I think something that you said that's really powerful is allowing space. And I think like the normal, crush it, achieve your dreams kind of mentality just does not breed space. And I think this whole spiritual world where you need to sit and meditate and do nothing, that concept is very difficult for people who are go-getters to wrap their head around. And you've said this a lot, but allowing space allows new energy and new creativity to come in. And so by shutting it all down and doing nothing, you actually allow more opportunity. It's funny when we're talking with other friends and they say, I don't know what to do, blah, 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 this and that and this and that. You said you just need to like do nothing for a bit and allow it to come in. And it's such a interesting concept.
Yeah, and I think it's different for everyone, right? Like I think because that's worked for you and for me, maybe it's not everyone's journey, but space and time, like as cliche as it is, it heals, and then when you're healing, you can invite in new vibrational matches and energy, and it's so fun.
I think this is so exciting to me. I'm just like, what other option is there but to just be open to like learning and growing through our experiences, and just like otherwise I feel like I'm dying. And
so when you came back, I think I asked, but when you decided you had this moment and you've conceived your son, but you come back to YouTube and you're sharing again. Did you feel authentic when you're sharing that time in your life, or did you feel like you were withholding some of the things that
I feel like I was withholding, and I was this is why I feel like I couldn't just do it for a huge amount longer, especially if we weren't traveling, but I felt there were a few things going on that I really wanted to document in my life. My pregnancy with my son, his birth, and I had like a really clear vision of that playing out, so I was like, that was exciting and felt, hey, I can do this. I wanted to do it. So in that way it was really genuine. But also with my son, I was going through my pregnancy completely outside the medical system. So it is sort of a less common thing to do, especially documenting on a public channel to, lots of people. So there were in ways like lots of things I was withholding as well. But I think we all do that. We have things that we share publicly and things we keep private. But it felt, I was able to get back into YouTube. I never really had a break. I just sort of continued on through all of that. It wasn't up until COVID when my son was like a year old when around when I stopped. Yeah.
And was it COVID, not traveling? That was sort of the reason you kind of stopped sharing, or was there more to it at that time as well?
Oh, I will get like super emotional. Okay.
I can't sit over
into
here.
it. You got tissues?
God, this isn't tissues.
I'll use my skirt. Hang on. Let me use my skirt.
This is why you wear a skirt. Exactly.
All right, I've just had my moment. So like, yeah, I'm okay.
All right. Like all the time you need.
Yeah.
And we also don't have to talk about whatever.
No, like I would like to. It's just, I think I don't often talk about the next, 6 months of my life. But it's good to speak about it. And whenever I speak about it, I feel like lighter. I'm like, yay, that was needed to be expressed. So, okay. So there was this stuff that I've sort of discussed about just feeling burnt out, feeling like we weren't traveling anymore. I didn't feel inspired to create videos. And I was also, this isn't this feeling of pushing up against something and forcing something that is not flowing anymore as well. Like the whole reason I started what I started was because I wanted to lead by example. And here I was like not doing that. So I thought initially, let's just let everything go and I would probably get back into it. I just needed a really good break. And I didn't want to announce anything and things like that. It was just, I didn't know what to say. I was processing it myself, but I was just like, let's have a break. Looking back at this time, it's clear and obvious to me, but when I was in it, I didn't have like this perspective. That whole year, like I probably in the middle of the year was when I stopped YouTube. From the start of that year, like I felt like my dad was dying. And I remember describing the feeling to Chris's mum one day because I was like I would be going to sleep at night, like my heart was like hurting. And I just felt like he was going, but nothing had been said and no one else seemed to notice. And I just had this feeling. And I described what was happening to Chris's mum, and she said to me, "Oh, it sounds like you're like mourning your dad." And he was still alive, like, and that was a huge thing going on in my life that I was just sort of.
And he wasn't like physically sick or anything?
He wasn't vibrant health, but
it wasn't like something changed.
No.
Wow.
And so that was, a couple months after we started YouTube was when I remember it was actually his birthday and all our family came together, and I was like, it was really challenging at the time because I was like, why do I feel such intense emotion? And I remember like crying myself to sleep, and then the next morning crying because I thought I had this feeling, and I think I said it to Chris, like, I have a feeling this is the last time like the whole family is going to be together. And my sister was sort of whinging about something, as you do, like sometimes when families all together, it can be really hard. And I said to her, I was like, just try to enjoy it because this might be Dad's last birthday. And she like looked at me like, what? Sort of thing. And it was just after that he called me and he basically just told me that he had like 3 to 6 months left to live was what he was told. And he actually passed away 6 weeks later. So it was really, really quick at the end. And, if we had have flown to the States and not returned to Australia, we quarantined at my parents' house. Like I had, nearly a whole more year with my dad that, maybe 10 months, seeing him that I would never have had. And then, so YouTube's like in the background.
Yeah,
now, like you just like, sorry, whatever.
Yeah.
But I had, before I found out about Dad, I was trying to conceive because that was the first time in my life I thought like, I know we're going to have 3 babies and I don't want to just draw this out. Like, I feel like let's have our babies now. And I've been on this big journey of just reclaiming my femininity and exploring my creative energy, my sexual energy. And just Chris and I we've been together for 15 years now. And it was just at this point in my relationship where I was just like looking at him and I loved him and I thought he was amazing, but there wasn't like this attraction, like there wasn't this fire there. And I'd given birth to my son, which was just like this huge thing in my life because I just felt like that was when I really understood what it meant to like take radical responsibility in my life, to just like fully own the circumstances around his birth, meet just like my power to trust myself. And I'd come out of this and then there was all of these other areas in my life that were like, like, what about us? Like over here, and I was like, oh shit, like my relationship, like my diet, so many things. So I'd been on this journey, and Chris and I were just exploring just our relationship and like reigniting it. And we were like, let's have our baby. And so I'd been trying to conceive, you know, we were open to conceiving for a few months, and then found out about Dad, and then Dad passed. And I remember thinking, like, he's never going to meet my kids. Like, that's like, if I have more babies, yeah. And he was a huge part of my life and the kids' life. And, you know, that was the person, one of the closest people to me in my life. And like, you in different circumstances, of course, like I understand that, you know, how big a thing that is. And it was actually, so I thought, yeah, well, obviously I'm not thinking about having a child. I just want to spend this whole year healing and just figuring life out without him. And I remember, like, I bled on my dad's funeral, like my bleed began, and I must have conceived the next cycle unknowingly. And then, yeah, my bleed didn't come again, and I was pregnant. And it was actually crazy because when, like, I was exactly 40 weeks on my dad's birthday. I was like, what?
Wow.
So it felt like such a beautiful gift in a way. Like, it just, those little things sometimes to me, like I hold, like, I'm like, no, that means
that's a nod from the universe.
Yeah.
And that's not a little thing, you know. So many people dismiss these things. It's like our friend who passed, my daughter was supposed to be born in December, and instead she was born a Scorpio the exact same time as our friend who had passed.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And like the woman who was the nurse, we were talking, are we going to give her the middle name Lee to honor Lee, blah, blah, blah. And the nurse says, well, if it makes a difference at all, like, my middle name's Lee. And I was just like,
that's,
you know, like, call it whatever anyone wants. I don't care.
Yeah.
What I know in my heart is that, like, Lee held Frankie's hand until the moment she came. Like, I know it. I don't care if people think I'm, like, who cares? You know? Grief is such a journey, isn't it? Like, it's almost like listening to you. And I know we have it's a different journey, but it like opens it up again. And I think it's beautiful it's got to move through you, you know? Like you were saying, like, it's good to share about it. It really is. But somehow it doesn't seem to get easier either.
You still feel shit at the time. You're like, oh, this is horrible.
But it's incredible how in tune you were to that. Like, do you think about that? Like, what, like
the
fact that you
conceived?
knew, no, the fact that you knew your dad was dying.
I mean, I haven't had that experience before. And yeah, my mum did too, because it was the night before we were gathering for his birthday. She was staying at our house and I was really emotional. And I ended up saying to her, like, I feel like I have this weird feeling that this is the last time we might be together, and like, Dad's going. And Mum's like, yeah, I like sense it too. So, but yeah, I don't know, but she lived with Dad, so I
really believe in like this, I don't even think it's a theory, but like quantum entanglement. Have you heard this term before?
I have, but
so for me, it's like sometimes I just meet someone, sort of how I feel with you, not to like, again, be too forward on our friendship.
I'm feeling it.
Yeah, it's okay. It's like we've known each other and we know each other, and I think we're all connected. I believe in that as well. But with certain people, like, the entanglement is stronger, and we have been drawing each other to each other.
Well, it's even like when you think of a friend you haven't thought of in a while, and then they text you
in its simplest form.
Like,
I think that
happens all the time.
Yes. Or I've had the most wild experiences with my bestie, and I'm like, something's happening for me in this physical world in real time, and he lives in Scotland, and he's having the exact, like, not the same experience, but the same experience. And then I go to tell him, and he's like, well, you wouldn't believe it. And I'm like, well, I believe everything at this point, of course, tell me more. But, it sounds to me like the connection with your dad is beyond just like this physical, him being your father, and like the entanglement is very strong, and a lot of that is happening energetically and in the 99% of the world that we can't see with our eyes.
Yeah, totally. I do feel like in a different time or place, my dad would have been like shaman or something like that. Like
I don't know your dad. I only know what you've shared and what I've seen, and I feel as though he's a shaman. Was he not? Was he not like a
maybe he was a secret shaman you didn't know?
He struggled so much to live in normal life. I think like he had big mental health issues, struggles, and a lot of like depression and things like that. But it's like that feeling of like that's why I think of him like more of a shaman. Like he was very like philosophical, like spiritual, and just like his presence. He wasn't meant to go and like be a laborer or like worker. Like he didn't have that in him. It wasn't like his gift to the world. And I think he was just like a bit like before his time, or more like visionary sort of person. Yeah.
Did you grow up knowing that your dad was struggling with things like depression, and did that affect you in your childhood, or was he good at is this too sensitive?
I'm happy to talk about it, but I do get emotional. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. Like my biggest fear my whole life was my dad dying. Like it was a really fear there because he did struggle with his mental health, and the most amazing thing about my parents is they were so open with us. And I feel like when there's secrecy and when things aren't spoken about, like shame festers, and their openness to their struggles and things like that was such a blessing. Like so many people struggle with their mental health. I knew, we knew, and it was discussed, and like a lot of people would go to my dad to talk to him. So it was a part of my childhood, like my dad's mental health in my family. So that's why as well, like when I'm having these experiences where I'm like, oh, like I feel like dad's dying, or like I'm having a mental breakdown and these things, I'm like, I could easily go into this storyline of like, oh, I'm like losing my mind. I could play into like this whole narrative that like my family has, like mental illness and things like that. And I'm not saying those aren't really legitimate experiences people had, but it was definitely an impactful part of my childhood. Yeah.
I feel like he sounds like your family was actually ahead of their time.
I was just going to say the
for
same.
being so open and willing to share as a family. I think it's really powerful. My family was pretty open about things, but not like stuff like that.
Yeah, like the parents were still to be like the authoritarian, like they've got the answers kind of thing.
Definitely.
Yeah. But also all I kept hearing was that your dad's gift to this world perhaps was that he knew the darkness and that he could see the light. I think there's something so beautiful about the dark night of the soul, or coming up against that real depression and that real darkness, because then you understand the empathy you can have for others, the space you can hold for others, the understanding. Like it seems to me like that was his light and his gift in some way, was that he's been on this journey and can openly share and hold space for whoever needs it, you know, whether it's his kids or people in your circle, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like what you said, now as an adult, I look back and I was like, oh, we discussed so many things that actually other families did experience. We weren't like the odd ones out, but it was more open about it, I suppose. Yeah.
And you had lots of siblings too, right?
Yeah. My parents had 6 kids.
One of 6.
Yeah.
Where do you fall in the order of children?
The 4th.
The 4th.
Yeah.
I always say I'm a middle child, so I have that middle child energy, but I don't know what you call a 4 of 6. Like you're
Still
in the middle. Wow. I first want to thank you for talking about your father. I think that it's so beautiful when we continue to keep them alive when we talk about them. And I want to ask, like, as someone who is spiritual and open, do you connect with your dad still? Are you open to like the signs? Have you had any experiences where you know he's with you? Has he been obviously a part of your third child's concept? He's like, let's conceive, let's carry, like, let's birth.
Was he in the room at that point?
When I told my sister this story, she's like, kind of creepy, but okay.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, actually something happened really recently. I was out going on my morning walk, and there's this creek that borders the property where we live, and I was walking across the creek and I was hit with this waft of like nag champa, which is a specific incense. And my dad burnt this incense every single day, and I walk there every day, and I'd been doing that for over a year, and I'd never smelt this before.
Wow.
So I was like, and we live really, like, I don't see anyone on my walks. Like, I see cows, the creek, trees, there's nothing going on. It's like deep in a valley. And so I smell this nag champa, and I was like, whoa. And I instantly thought, like, oh, Dad has like something to show me, or like something to tell me. But I wasn't really thinking about him necessarily when that happened, and I kept walking. And I was like, I think I was listening to a podcast or something, kept walking, went to the end of the road, turned around. And as I was coming back to that spot, I was like, I wonder if I'll smell it again. And I wanted to. And I was like, and then standing in that spot was this woman. I've never seen her before. And I instantly was like, she's going to, we're about to have a moment. But it was strange because she would have been my dad's age and similar characteristics of my dad. Like, she was an artist and my dad was like very artistic. And we start talking, and the first thing I had said to this woman, basically, she was like looking at the creek, and I said, oh my gosh, like, how amazing is it? Like, how blessed are we to be here? It was a beautiful day. And she just asked me, like, do I live here? And I said, I live just over there. We've only been here a year. I never want to leave. And we get speaking, and we were talking for about 40 minutes on this walk. And she was just this incredible, wise. It was just like, people say we don't have the village, and we don't have like these older, wiser people to like share their wisdom so much. And that is what it felt like. And like I said, though, I thought, like, Dad's got a message for me or something to share with me. And she basically told me her life story, and she lived in the valley next to us. And yeah, I'd never seen her before. She just had so much like wisdom and love to share. And when she was explaining all of this, like, she had this heart operation after this birth, and she goes, anyway, I've been living in fear for so long. And I got to the point where I realized, like, I just had to live beyond the fear. And what it showed me was, like, never stop creating. Like, just create and then create some more and keep going. And that's the point of it all. And I was just like,
wow.
I felt like I needed to hear that, because for me, I can create or like do something, and then I stay stagnant a little bit. I care too much about it or how it was received, anything. And it's just like, just be more playful and fun, and just like let it go and move on and keep creating. And I walked away, and I was like, I walked back up like, poor Chris, he's always just like, I walked back up and I'd be like crying. He's like, are you okay? Like, it's something like, you were gone for so long, we were going to come. And I was like, I met a woman, like, we had this moment.
She's my dad. Trust me, Eamon gets it. I'm like,
yeah. That's what I was thinking. I was like, yeah. And Chris is like, you know what? Like, hell yeah, though. Like, he can get amongst him. But yeah. So, and there's been a couple of other times with Dad in dreams. Again, I won't go into the whole story, but my most recent birth and pregnancy, I have had the most fear out of any of my children about giving birth.
Wow.
I was just had all of this fear, and I see what it was, and it felt like it was just like this upper limit. Like, it's like, how good am I willing to allow this to be, because everything's perfect right now. Like I am in love with like the man of my dreams, like my children are just thriving and beautiful. I love where we live. And so it's like, it can't be that good. Like I better start worrying about something, you know,
Isn't
to
that
just cap it. And I see the fear.
What is that inside of us that does that?
Ask Jinti. She's got all the answers.
I call it the upper limit, and I learned that from Gay Hendricks, and he wrote The Big Leap, and I think he's an amazing man, and him and his wife have written like 40 books together, and they just have a beautiful union. And but he says like we all have this sort of inner thermostat for like how good we're willing to feel before it actually becomes so uncomfortable and unsafe because it's no longer familiar to us, and we create these experiences and scenarios to like put a ceiling on it and actually like come back to what is more familiar and known to us. Because if we want something new, we have to go into the unknown, and we have to like be these courageous explorers, and it's scary. Like fear's always there, and so we like bring it back in. And anyway, that was a side tangent, but
that was a beautiful explanation of it, and something that I don't like. Of course, we have fear of failure, but it's that whole quote of like, you're not afraid of your light, you're not afraid of your darkness, you're afraid of your light. It's like that upper limit. Like I've never heard it explained as, you know, succinctly as you just explained it. So thank you. That's big. Can be applied to anything. We'll chat offline.
We'll go through your whole
Is
list.
it your
No,
music?
all
I'm
of
like,
us.
if it's about your music, I'm like, I can't wait to hear your
Oh.
music. I think it was the Hot Seat episode. That's the one I listened to. And when I listened to that and you must have spoken about it, I was like, this is going to be amazing.
Bring it on.
Yeah. Anyway, it was during my pregnancy. I had all this fear, and I had a dream where my dad came and visited me, and he just looked like he's come to visit in 2 dreams, but he just looks younger and just
Bouncy,
more radiant and like light. And yeah. And he just said to me basically like, everything is okay and everything is going to be okay. And that was like the whole message. And I just woke up like, once again, Chris is like,
oh no, you see another woman?
Dad's back.
So that dream was before the birth?
Yeah. It
was,
was,
how good. How reassuring is that?
Everything.
It was everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was asking about the authenticity piece because I've come back, but I'm different. And that upsets people, you know, the evolution, like the person they knew, it's different. And I'm talking about things that maybe I wasn't talking about before. And Eamon says to me, should we like dial it back a little bit? And I'm like, why? Like, I don't want to. If we're going to dial it back, I don't want to do it.
Let's turn it up.
Let's crank it. What is reality? You know, like, it's like.
So I love that you had the chat on the way.
On the way here, because maybe it's the upper limit, or it's just, I don't know. But you know, when you feel the people dropping off, when I'm in my good space, I'm like, let them fall away to make room for those who are.
Yeah. I mean, and then the business mind in my head is kind of like, well, this is all very intense information. So is there a more strategic, subtle, because I'm into this. It's not like I'm not into it.
Is it intense, or are we all just remembering what we all know?
Yeah.
And so we can just share. And if people don't want to listen, I don't know. Now that we're back on the road, it has become even more apparent how important it is to pack lightly. I know we have Frankie, and so it looks like we did not pack light or minimalist at all because of all her gadgets and strollers and things. But we packed fairly light. And the reason we were able to do that is because of Unbound Merino. Genuinely, merino wool has saved us in all of our backpacker years and continues to pull through. It's temperature regulating, so it's good for Colorado and Hawaii and Australia. It's moisture wicking, and for whatever reason, it just never smells. So you can wear these pieces. I have a blue tank top I'm always wearing, the socks I'm always wearing, wear them over and over and over and over again. I wore them to CrossFit the other day and then wore them out to dinner. It's kind of embarrassing, but that's how it works when you're a minimalist and you're traveling.
If I was wearing socks, they would be Unbound Merino. I used them literally at the gym yesterday, And that was the 4th time in a row I used them working out. Unbound's clothing allows travelers to pack lighter, save on checked baggage fees, and spend more time focusing on creating travel memories.
Head over to their website, unboundmerino.com, where new customers can use our code Reroot for 15% off their order.
We promise you'll love it. Try some out for yourself.
Actually, I just want to say, I also love that they're a Canadian company and they're founded by 3 lifelong friends who were just traveling and needed better quality things. I love supporting the business when I know the story behind the owner. So shout out to the 3 friends who created Unbound Merino. We love your stuff.
Steve and Tom. That's not their names.
I know.
You said diet. I was interested to talk about that as well. It's triggering for some people. I think we both were this plant-based persona online.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like there's a real shift in this plant-based world. For us, I think it started with your pregnancy of, craving eggs and then opening that door up to, okay, well, I haven't eaten animal products in so long. Are you open to sharing about that or talking about your transition?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. This is all a while ago as well. And also was happening in the during leaving YouTube as well. It was honestly after I'd given birth and I said, I fully really trusted my intuition. I birthed just with, Chris and my sister and my child, and I had, just an amazing experience, and I'd fully trusted what I needed to do, and I'd done it. And then these other areas of my life that needed addressing became really obvious to me. And through my pregnancy as well, I had craved eggs.
Mm-hmm.
So my dad was eating scrambled eggs, and he'd been eating vegan for a couple of years.
Wow.
And so he started eating eggs, and I felt like, how dare you? Because I was watching him and I was I wanted that, but I was like, I couldn't.
Yeah.
And so in my early postpartum, there was not a single thing that I could think of that I wanted to eat. And we value our health highly. We're not the limit. Just if you want to buy whatever you want to buy in terms of supplements, food, we were really free in that area. So it's not like I was, not having access to amazing produce and things like that. But I had no appetite, and I lost weight really quickly after giving birth, and I just felt depleted, and I had a lot of brain fog, and I just was and so intuitively though, I was having these strong, I was dreaming about eating steaks and burgers. And I was raised mostly vegetarian. I was vegetarian for years before I was vegan as well. So it's not like that was a normal part of my life to just eat a steak. Never craved a steak before. Chris grew up eating a lot of meat. His dad was a butcher, so it would have made more sense for him to just crave a familiar meal. But for me, I was like, oh, this is really intense. And I wrestled with that for nearly a year before I actually acted on it, because my body felt like it was sending this really loud and clear message about what it wanted. But then I would go up into my head and I would get into all of these discussions about why I was a terrible person for doing that. And that's not who I was. And I can't do that. And what would people think? And, the whole thing. So this wasn't just a little thing. It was a really big thing in my life at the time that I was like, oh. And we also had family. Most of our friends around us were vegan. And I'm just like, oh, no, not this. Yeah. But one night I just said to Chris, I think it's interesting. You know how you can sort of see it in other people more easily than you can see it in yourself?
Yeah.
So just one day, as I was having these cravings and there was a while before this, I had actually started feeling weird about the word vegan, because Aya, my eldest daughter, was 3 at the time, 4. And she was just at an age where it just felt weird to use these labels without having to fully explain it all to her and answer all of these questions. And as I started answering these questions, I was like, oh, is this what I believe? Is this what I want to tell her? How do I want to navigate this as a parent? So that started happening. So I really stepped away from sort of even using that word a lot. And then, anyway, eventually I said to Chris, I'm like, I'm going to buy a steak and I'm going to cook it and I'm going to eat it. And he was like, no, like, oh, no. Like, this is
no.
not this too. Actually, it was not.
So you were eating eggs at that point?
No.
You went for the steak?
I was like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it.
Wow.
Yeah. And it wasn't actually, it's actually far from here. It was there's an organic butcher in Miami, and Chris pulled the bus up. He wouldn't even go in with me. He's like, you're on your own. Anyway.
I can't wait to meet Chris one day.
And so I got it, cooked it, and was basically instantly, my body's response was just like, oh.
Wow.
And then I went from there. We ended up going to New Zealand really soon after this. And eventually Chris tried it in New Zealand as well. And then our daughter was like, no, like, and that was
she knows as a cow, and she's like emotionally.
Yeah. And
like
also just our programming of that's wrong and this is right was pretty confusing.
Yeah.
And so eventually we said to her, like, we just ate it and did our thing and let her do her thing. Like, obviously we cooked all of her food and stuff like that. You're like, you do your own shopping now.
Yeah. Just eating dry cereal in the corner.
No, we didn't, force her into anything,
Yeah.
And eventually I saw her watching us eat it, and I just said to her, I'm like, it's okay. Like, it's okay if you want to ever try it, just tell me. And she ended up trying it, and she ended up eating steak. She actually called it cow. She was eating cow. This is going to be really triggering for some people, sorry. But she ended up eating that every day for a week. And then she was like, done. And she just like dabbled here and there, and just sort of like how I was eating. Just when I had it, she would have bits and pieces. But she put on she changed in a week. We could see in her face.
Wow.
And then, we just sort of went on from there. Just more like no labels, just what do I need today? And just trying. I really learned into, I can analyze it all day long in my head, and I can get into all sorts of debates, and I can this and that. But at the end of the day, like, I'm just going to listen to what I need and try to do my best and make the best decisions I can. And even today, I ate some jerky earlier, and it's still sometimes really weird for me. Like, I'm still like, oh, this is an animal.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, at this stage of my life, I'm choosing to, I really feel like it's been extremely nourishing for me. And I noticed some nearly like instant shifts, or even just how humbling it is. You think, when you think you know something and you're like adamant that I know it, and you're on your high horse and rah, rah, rah. It's just very humbling to be like, you know what, I actually don't know.
I think the big part that's resonating with me here is like that label of vegan was really triggering. Like, when you'd be at a family dinner and they'd be like, oh no, you can't eat that. And like putting you in that category of you can be like very, very strict.
Yeah.
Right.
But we also did that, right? Like, we're creating our
100%.
reality, and we would use that label, and then they're just trying to be kind to us,
Yeah. No, I know. It's not
like separate thing.
Yeah, but that energy of like you can and you can't. And then for me it became like I was craving these vegan steaks, these vegan meats. And that stuff's not good too. So
It's interesting. I felt all of us shrink a little bit in this topic. And even you, when you said something, you said this is going to be so triggering for people. Like, I think it's an interesting thing to talk about and be okay with, like, whatever anyone's going to feel. Where are you at not being online as much, and, in yourself, aside from the food conversation, in upsetting people? Because I think that's been a part of my journey. It's like this really big people pleaser in me that I didn't know was all my programming essentially, and, you know, rewarded for being the good girl and this good student. And I guess you're online a little less, but perhaps I'm trying to learn from you again in navigating whether you were a people pleaser or not. When negative energy comes to you, or did it? I'm not sure. What was your channel like? Did people filter and only the right ones were there, or was there some loud audiences of...
I think with all things, that it doesn't matter how many praises are being sung, you're going to hone in on the criticism. And so it feels bigger than it is. There was one time in particular, I remember a couple of people sent me a link to a video, and I don't normally just go and watch them, but it was a weird thing that a few people had sent me this link, and I clicked on it, went to it, the video was loading, I started reading the comments, and there was like over 1,000 comments. And I was like reading them, I was like, oh my gosh, this this poor person. And the video was about me, and it was like a 25-minute long video.
So before you even knew it was about you, you had empathy for the person everyone was talking smack about in the comments.
But then I found out it was me, and I was like, oh no, this is so bad. But yeah, I think those things.
But were you able to almost disassociate because you viewed it at first from the lens of like, oh, whoever this person is, I feel for, or did it just absolutely take over you? And
I think it doesn't. It never feels good.
Yeah.
It's not going to feel great. And it was also, you know, I can see that it's really funny because Chris, when my brother sent him a video, and it was just someone dragging him.
Just Chris?
Dragging Chris?
How? I actually haven't seen it, but my brother was trying to show someone something about this channel, and he was like, Chris, like, do you know that someone made a video about you? And my brother didn't use YouTube. He was just so shocked that someone would take this time to do this. And Chris, I remember him watching it, and like him and my brother were sort of like having a laugh, and then Chris was like, you know, she's got some valid points, you know, like, and then that was it. He moved on with his day. Wow. It impacted me so much more. I was like, how dare they? And he was just sort of like, because I remember like days later, I was like, are you thinking about that a lot? And he's like, I genuinely haven't thought about it again. So I think it's the things that, you know, we aren't at peace within ourselves. When someone touches a nerve, you feel it. And so it is always.
If it's got a little bit of truth.
Exactly.
Or in your brain it has truth.
Yes. Or if you've got some sort of story. And now I think a huge lesson for me lately, having my 4th baby, like this has been the biggest, it's been a reoccurring lesson, but it's just coming up really strongly for me again, is just nourishing myself. And if I'm in a depleted state or I'm under-resourced, I'm going to be really impacted by external noise. But if I'm, you know, grounded in me, I'm looking after myself, I'm expressing myself, I can have the capacity to like hold those thoughts and not let them, you know, take me out.
I really want to be your best friend.
Yeah.
I feel that this is like the message I want to give moms, especially, is like, there's something in us, the programming is like, if I'm not spending all my time with that child, like, you know, like that's how I nourish all of us. But really, truthfully, like for the first time in over a year, I didn't properly meditate because we were on Stratty Island, and like the day was just kind of like dragging me, you know? And we get in the car and I'm saying to Eamon, I don't know what's happening, but I have no patience for you. I have no patience for Frankie. I want out of this car. Like,
I want a bag of chips.
Yeah. Like, I need chips now. Like, I was just not myself. And then we got to like a hotel room, and I'm like, please, I need an hour. And as soon as I like just tuned in, like, oh, come on. It's all just, we're supposed to have fun. Like, make a little light of it. It's not such a big deal. But in that car, I'm telling you, all my demons like it's a practice every single day. It's not like, oh, you can have like a little me time, or at least for me. I can't just have like, go have a girls' night. Like that actually doesn't fill me up. It's like that inner work and that like time for me that really gives me the capacity to be like the best version of myself.
I feel that. And it can be this thing where you're like, okay, I've done that. And then you can slip into old patterns so easily when you've been spending a lifetime sort of abandoning your own needs unconsciously, even just because you like, oh, be helpful, or, you know, I'll do what I have to do without first considering your own. It's just like this repeated lesson that I think, and women in particular, we do tend to find safety in people pleasing, like in a way that I don't think men need to as much, because you don't need that safety or protection so much. For me, I'm just like snapping at my kids. I like hate everyone. I'm like, there's no hope in this world. Like this all.
It goes from like la 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 to like one day of no meditation. I'm like on the floor, like shut it all down, Eamon. Like get me out of, like it's crazy.
My thing's eating enough. I can just eat some scraps or prepare for my kids or rush out the door to get them somewhere, and then I can get to the end of the day and I'm like, I'm so much more rigid and just exhausted and short when I'm undernourished. And then if I really prioritize just making sure I take the time to just feed myself properly and actually like be resourcewful, then I'm like, oh, I can hold more.
You have more energy. And,
And of course, like I like go on walking meditations a lot, but I notice how much that is such a huge change in my day. If I don't have that, I'm like, we're sort of more in a survival.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so easy, like you said, to like the automatic wiring of the brain that's been programmed for my 30-something years is like that survival, you know, like just keep going and doing and yada, yada. What does a day look like for you guys now? I don't know that anyone's really had a look. And actually, I just wanted to say, like last night watching some of your content together and like just falling in love with your family again, we're saying it's so cool to have a look at someone's life, and it made me understand why people might enjoy the same with us. It was a really cool moment I had where I'm just like, I really like these guys, you know, and it was just so fun. And I'm
sure you're missed.
Like many, like myself and Eamon, not to put any pressure, of course, stay offline. It's beautiful. But
if you did, the video would do well. I'm
sure. I'm back.
I thought about actually doing that sometimes, but I'm finding that I am so just in the season of motherhood right now. So my day is, you know, today the kids homeschool. So they had a circus class in town, like do acrobatics and stuff with other homeschool kids. And then like a couple of their friends came back. We normally go to the creek in the afternoons. They have, you know, just a few classes through the week and like a homeschool co-op that we're a part of.
That's cool.
But otherwise we also, you know, a huge thing for us is family time together. But we sort of always have, I don't know, we just structure our days a lot around the kids and their life. Like we're just really in parenthood right now. And I've been someone that's traveled a lot from leaving school and just always traveling and just putting a lot of like my identity in being a traveler. So it's actually been so nice to slow right down and just grow some roots and just like very simple sort of life, I think I have.
And how is your relationship with Instagram? Because you do let us in a little bit.
Yeah, I use Instagram a fair bit. I actually just really enjoy sharing parts. And so it's very energizing to me, especially if I don't take it too seriously. If I just, you know, do my little thing here and there.
I also find the comments are not as harsh on Instagram. There's something about you click over and people have accountability because they have their own page that YouTube really needs to work on. So YouTube is full of all these Henry 57934, right? And they don't have a picture and a profile. And
I actually do TikTok a little bit.
You do TikTok?
TikTok a little because it actually helped me just get back into sharing again, because I'll post anything on TikTok. I don't care. I mean, I do care about, like, I'm not sharing any, just it's just random little bits and pieces. Whereas I find that on Instagram, it's more curated. I'm overthinking. It has to look maybe a certain way.
Yeah.
Whereas TikTok, it's like the lighting's terrible. I'm like in my granny undies and making a drink and I'll like have a chat about something and that's fine. Like it's just a different audience
Cool.
again. But I don't know what it is. I think obviously you guys feel it in the same way. Like there's something I just feel I like sharing.
Same.
When I can just not overthink it. It feels good. Yeah.
It feels like a part of my purpose. Like a year ago, I was like, shut everything down. Like, dark night of the soul, like I'm out. And then there was just this like, whatever it is, that voice, that's that yearning to connect by sharing. And here we are. Here we friggin' are, huh?
Yeah. Do you have anything exciting coming up that you're working on, or are you really just in this phase of your life where you're enjoying motherhood and that's wonderful too. I'm not saying like that's like the worst option. That sounds like a beautiful option.
Yeah, and I think that's something we talked about yesterday. You're like, would you be happy if we shut it all down?
Yeah.
And we're just like living on a beach.
I wish I could say yes.
Oh, my answer is yes.
I know. I don't know what it is inside me, but I
You're like building though. Like I feel like a man, like
Yeah.
building a kingdom, and you're like, what am I gonna do if I like? That's my. Purpose.
I think it's a fear thing. I think it's a fear of waking up and not knowing what I would be building
A beautiful
or
life,
working
a beautiful
towards.
family.
Yeah. No, you're right.
I know.
No,
It's
this
not my
is
journey.
so. I feel like the difference between a man and a woman as well. Like Chris is exactly the same. I can just have my days be like, let's lay this on, let's read to the kid. Like, and he's just like, what is happening?
Like,
I
what did
can't
we
just
do
live like
today?
this.
Yeah.
Like the occasional, on the week, like, but he's just like wants to be building something and creating something. And so I feel like we've just gone through in the past, 5 years, I've had 3 children and we've been so in parenthood, and it's been a huge blessing that we have been able to spend so much time with our kids, the both of us, and we've been there and it's been amazing. But we are definitely feeling like we're entering a different season of our life where like we want to give birth to something that's not a baby.
Cool.
And yeah, create something exactly the same with how YouTube started. Just be like, what sort of example do we want to be for our children? And like, let's, go after something that excites us. And
Very cool.
yeah.
So
Do you
we'll be
guys
seeing
like
more
working
Jinti in
together?
some form. Do we know? Do you have ideas of what that looks like, or not yet?
We have like slowly in the processes, but I feel like it's
Too early stage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've done this before. I've shared something too early.
No,
and
don't do it.
Then you're like, oh no, it was too soon.
Yeah.
And,
I love
but
that.
Yeah.
I really do. Because if
Yeah.
it's not ready, then
It's-
it's not worth sharing yet.
Do you guys work well together? Like dynamics?
Terribly.
Okay.
But that's how I know now as well that is how it needs to be. Like he is like the laborer of something. Like he's going to get something going but I want it, like I care about the little details and the feel and the look of it and stuff like that. And so it's this constant like back and forth of like driving each other sort of insane, but then like, but you're all right. Like we like each other as well still, but like, oh, you're so annoying, like creating together. But also I have so much appreciation for him because without him, like we would do absolutely nothing. Like we wouldn't do a website.
Well,
Like,
you've
I don't
also
know.
done it enough years. I feel like with us, it's we know how to work with each other. I wouldn't say we necessarily work perfect together, but we figured it out. We know
I think we're actually really quite good at it. Like we've had to navigate. So I think what our downfall maybe was some of the time was we didn't have as clearly defined, like you said, you would film and then Chris would edit and take it to publish. We'd both do both. And then it would be like, watch my edit. And we'd have to have all these rules. Like when you sit down to watch my edit, you will say nothing but positive things for a minute. After a minute and a half, you can squeeze in one critique. Then you have to give me because it's such a sensitive thing when you've spent all this time doing this.
Oh my god, that's amazing. We are similar with this. Yes. That's amazing.
Yeah. And it was like, but now we have an editor, but even still it'd be like, that was my vision for the scene. And so it was almost blurry because I would want something that you would.
There's only one director. right? That's why
Yeah.
the movie has one director. So now we literally, if we're filming something, we're like, who's directing this video?
That's a great idea.
Like, who's going to take the lead? And I need to surrender to you taking the lead, even though I also want to like insert my creativity. It's like your turn to
Communication.
I'll surrender, but I still have strong opinions.
Yeah.
I will try my hardest to hold
that I
on
will
to.
sandwich between compliments, but I have an opinion. Yes. Oh, that's so exciting. I'm so glad you guys are working on something. I mean, you still have only she's 7 months. So you have a girl, a boy, and 2 girls.
Yeah.
But you've often said you thought you'd have 3.
Yeah.
Can we back it up to you obviously consciously conceived your 4th? You know.
Yeah. Well, I always thought we'd have 3.
Yeah.
Well, before we had our first, we had been together for 5 years and we'd never spoken about having kids. We felt like, I think it was just unsaid. Like we sort of felt like we were life partners. And so after having Aya, I just knew we were having more kids. Always was like, yeah, we've got our 3 kids. And we felt, we had such a good dynamic in our family. And I was thinking, it's okay. Like I feel great about our family, but I love having babies. I love I don't know. It's just the biggest blessing, I think. And I started thinking, like, I feel like there is another boy.
Soul.
I thought, and then Chris was like, oh, here we go. Like this is
Chris, I had a vision.
The title of this video is just Chris, here we go again or something.
But yeah, it was a little bit of a surprise, but not really a surprise. Okay, if I'm just going to, as soon as we made love, I said to Chris, there is no way we didn't just make a baby.
Wow.
And he's like, yeah. And the next day we were traveling.
You're getting real good at this at this point,
day,
huh?
like it was like a weird, intense moment. And the next day I'd forgotten about it in the morning. I was sort of joking, but like I was like, I'm pretty sure that was a baby. And we also took precautions to not make a baby. But anyway, the next morning we were packing up to go. We were in far north Queensland with the kids, and he's like, oh, first outing, family of 6, let's go. And I was like, oh, I was like, what? And then, I was pregnant and we were just like, oh.
Wow.
Yeah. So then when things like that happen for me, I'm just like, I'm not going to
Sorry, what does it mean he took precautions? Like he had a condom?
No.
But
pulled out.
Yeah.
Okay.
It wasn't like even a close call. Like it was,
Okay, wow.
No.
So, okay, I need to know more. Like, what do you feel? It's like an energy?
Or is it passion?
I feel like we're going to touch on so many different topics in
yes.
this episode. But I had mentioned a bit about how I was like, well, let's explore, like our sexuality, like our relationship. I was really trying to be more in touch with my emotions because my grief journey, I had, experienced so much sadness and all of these things that I was labeling as wrong. Like there's good emotions, there's right emotions, and there's wrong ones that are unacceptable that I'm trying to avoid. And I sort of came to this understanding that it all just needed to be expressed and
it's all okay. It's
all okay. But if I attach these stories and narratives, that's when they stick around and I go through these cycles. And I'm like, I just need to let it go. And so I was like, okay, I can be in touch with my anger and I can be in touch with my sadness and my joy. But there felt like this big block around my creative energy, my sexual energy. And when I was giving birth, I felt like it was almost just like this unknown area of my body. And I was like, whoa. So I was like, what does it even mean to be a woman? Like exploring my femininity and then exploring this idea of like receiving and allowing pleasure in my life. And I feel like our like intimacy really changed. And it went from more of like a superficial like thing into like a much deeper like, I don't know if you guys have heard of like cervical orgasms.
No, but I'm like here for this conversation.
Yeah. So like the cervix is like the portal really. And it's like the deeper we are able to go and open, like it's like life changing experiences, like really intense. And so yeah, we had been like exploring that a lot. And so like the conception of this baby was just like really, really intense moment that I was like, something just happened. That's what it felt like.
And
like
it did.
orgasm wise.
Yeah, but it's like almost sort of bordering on like psychedelic experience. Google it. Google cervical orgasm.
No, I'm just going to call you after this podcast.
Okay,
You can
Jinti,
drive
we're on
home and tell me
FaceTime.
everything.
Walk us through. What's the technique?
I think what you've touched on there is, as women, I think we're allowed to feel more emotion societally than men are, perhaps. But I think we are taught to shame our sexuality, like in our pleasure and our, like, you know, just the terminology that's thrown around. And there's just so much to it, especially if you grow up in religion. I feel like there's a lot of shame. And so it's beautiful that you took a look at it as you take a look at everything in your life, and you were open to like evolving the experience, you know, and for a deeper connection with your partner, which we've seen over 13 years of, like, you know, the evolution of it all. It starts off as like you're 20 and it's all amazing. And
especially after you have a kid, becomes like, all right, your shift, you get a high five. And we're trying to work on that. Is this part of what you said? You said something about like the spark and the fire within your relationship. Is this all tied into that?
Yeah, fully. You know that feeling of being sort of roommates, like you're friends, but there's not this like polarity, and there needs to be for the attraction and the spark to be there. And so we definitely began exploring that more, which is just absolutely life-changing, because not only is there like so much shame and suppression and things like that, there's also like how we emasculinate our partners completely unconsciously, and like how willing men are to give us everything that we want, but we don't even know what we want. And I feel like it was a huge unraveling for us. And
so what did you like do a course?
Is this the new big project you're gonna come out with?
Oh my God, yes. Clearly we're both like, yes, tell us more. I think we're on that journey, to be quite honest. It's like there's just been a lot that has happened for us this last year. Yeah. And there's just a lot of like
reigniting the spark.
Yeah.
The spark hasn't been there.
But it's so much love. And like, that's what I loved listening to you say a little bit ago, was like, I love him so much.
And I feel like you can be with someone for so long, and that is just such the beauty of longer relationships, where we are always changing, and you almost, you're like, I don't even know you in so many ways. You're still uncovering and rediscovering, and just like that commitment to going through it together is just like, oh, I love that.
I know, because you guys aren't married either, are you?
No.
Yeah, but like more married than a married couple, you know? Same with us.
Yeah, I always thought maybe we had this like vision of a property that we would love, and so like maybe one day we'd have some sort of ceremony on like family land or something like that. But yeah, I don't know what it would really change for us. Yeah.
So our lives are very similar, because we are finally doing this after 8, 10, 12
years.
12
I
years.
said to him the other day.
It's so different to 12.
Exactly. I'm
well,
like,
I don't know if we're
today's our
counting it
12-year
from
anniversary. He's like, oh, cool. From what? Oh, you mean from when we got engaged?
Yeah, I don't
right.
know what that's about.
Okay.
But we finally have just booked a date. We hired like a wedding planner. And the main reason for us is to be more of like that. I would love to, because Frankie has Fitzgerald. I would love for us to be like a family name. And then also to have our community from all over the world in one place.
And like we have the proper, like it's our home, you know, like
My heart's like,
yeah,
it will be so beautiful.
It's going to be so beautiful, because what a celebration of a relationship. Yeah. That's already been through so much. And, you know, it's not like, oh my gosh, you don't know my family, and they, you know, and here, let's have a wedding to celebrate this relationship, which, no judgment, but like, you know, you haven't actually stood the test of time yet. And this is a real celebration, I feel like. Yeah. I wanted to ask one last question about, I guess it's like the project question, but what you're currently manifesting, because I feel like you used to talk a lot about manifestation and like drawing things to you. Is it this next big project you're giving birth to? Is it the property? What are you currently actively working on, I guess? Like, if that's the right question to ask.
I feel like I'm just in a stage right now of coming out of, earlier postpartum. So I'm 7 months having a baby, and I'm just like getting clear on the vision almost of just like, what do I want? And just opening to, where do we want to take this sort of thing? And we definitely have, ideas of what we want, but I'm not like really holding on to that and being like, that is the way. It's sort of just like, just feeling like really open and curious about what's going to show up for us. But yeah, I would say the project, the land, and
is your family complete? I guess never say never.
Yeah, I feel like we're very fertile.
Yes.
But I also have just come to this place where I'm like, I'm never going to want to stop having babies with this man. Like, we love having babies. But it doesn't mean we have to keep having children. And having 4 children, it's a lot. I find I'm so in it that the logistics of even having another child. Like, if I had another set of hands, I'm like, okay, we're good to go. But it would be huge to have another child. So I'm just like, maybe we can channel that energy into, something else, I think. But also, we'll see.
Yeah. We just came from, I think you said, we DM'd about it, Ellen Fisher, but you don't know her, like you've never met in person.
Yeah.
She's got 5 kids, and being with them, we stayed with them, and like so much joy. Aww. And so much. And, I think her last 2 were like, we're complete at 3, and then whoops, there's a whoops, like, I don't know. I think there's no amount that is too much.
Andrew admitted she said he finally has a vasectomy.
Oh yeah,
so that's
he's like, okay, we're not
pretty
having
well
a 6.
certain, but
yeah,
it's
cool to watch that dynamic between the kids, and maybe this from being from a family of 6, but there's so many relationships that are happening.
You look around sometimes. Chris and I would look at each other. We're like, okay, it was just us 2, and then we're looking around, and I'm like, there are so many people here.
Yeah.
And how did this just happen?
That's amazing.
I think that's so cool.
So fun.
It's got to be the coolest. You have those little moments where you're just looking at the party that is just a Tuesday night, right?
Yes.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, seeing siblings and their relationships and things like that. When I had 1 child, I don't know, the thought of having a large family, I would think of my mum who had 6 children and be like, what? How did that? This is impossible. And now having 4, I'm like, they're not all newborns. They're not all 1-year-olds. And there's different stages of life, and they all interact with each other and going through different things. And it just flows and sort of, it works.
Yeah.
It has to.
Yeah.
I mean, even having like a grab you a nappy, like little things like that, where just like you said, another set of hands must be nice.
We have a segment on the show where we pull a card from our Real Talk, which is our conversation starter game from our tea company. So I'd love to pull a card and play.
Do you need more tea, by the way? You've been such a supporter of the brand. I really appreciate it.
That chai pot?
Yeah.
We use that multiple times every single day since you got that. Amazing. They sent that to me.
Unreal.
It is amazing. Aww. And you got me hooked on Earl Grey.
Yeah.
There's a fresh bag right behind you. You can take it home.
Why did I think Earl Grey was like
not good?
Dreary British tea or something?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Often it's not great though. Like
really?
I think like a great tea actually is very different from like Twinings or these like things you can grab.
Yeah.
So yeah, take that home with you.
Thank you.
Shout out to Earl Grey. I love that.
I know. I'm not on social media anymore, but Eamon was saying, he's like, Jinti's been so sweet with the brand. Like, I know that we sent tea to friends.
She's very supportive.
Thank you.
But also, I love drinking tea. I grew up, I remember like my brother would have been like 5, having like 7 cups of tea a day. Like my family are tea people. And the chai.
Nailed it.
It's so good.
Thank you.
It really is.
Thank you. And the Earl Grey.
Is there something you would change about yourself and why?
Mm.
I feel like if there's something I would change about myself, I would just change it. Do you know?
Yes, girl.
And otherwise, I'm just going to pretend like I'm not unconsciously choosing it. Do you?
I love that.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. Or maybe you're unconscious to the thing that you need to change, but you're like the type of person who is awake and like figuring it out.
Yeah, but I feel like, yeah, I think if the question is, it sort of is like, you don't have the power to change it. Like, oh, is there one thing that you wish you could do differently? And I'm like, I feel like what I need to do more of probably is get more curious and ask more questions that will lead me to like seeing what I'm not seeing. Yeah.
About yourself specifically?
Yeah. Like I feel like whatever I want to change, I can, but am I willing and open to exploring and becoming aware of what it is? So I don't know. That probably doesn't really answer, but I suppose maybe just being less reactive when I'm reactive. And yeah, I don't really have anything specific.
I love the answer because the truth is we're creating our own reality and you have the power to change anything. You know, we're so much more unlimited than we give ourselves credit for. So it is just a matter of being willing to put in the energy it takes to figure out what the programming is, because that does take energy and time. And then to make that change.
Plus, like you already did change some massive things in your life. And not a lot of people do that. Like deciding to like just stop your career and your work and your YouTube channel. Like people talk about that, but they don't do it. And then working on your passion and your love with your partner. Like you just decided you're going to change that. That's fucking amazing.
Or what about like birthing outside this? Like there's just so much natural things you've chosen that show and prove that you know that you can change anything.
I mean, there's plenty of things that like I would like in my future as well that I haven't experienced yet. So maybe those would be the changes. And but I feel like they'll come. Yeah.
This is not a real talk, and I just can't like escape the idea of, I've heard you talk about whether you grew up without money or you had like a mindset around money, and knowing that you had to shift to like this abundant frequency to draw it to you essentially. Where are you currently at with like abundance and money, and what do you think a piece of advice would be? Because I think a lot of people get stuck in this pattern of thinking about money, and of course money gives you freedom, and so it's, for me, I thought it was like a negative thing. And people I had witnessed with money, I didn't grow up with a lot of it, and then people who I noticed who had it seemed like negative people. I just had so many beliefs around it that I had to change. What would your advice be for someone, and where are you at on your like abundance journey?
Yeah, I think growing up I had the programming or just the belief, there was a lot of fear and scarcity around money. And then I went into this place of like, oh, like I'll manifest it, or like this law of attraction, but it's sort of superficial. And where I'm at now is like, I can't want to be abundant. Like I have to be, I have to feel it now. It's not some sort of future thing. So for me, it's about, appreciating and choosing to express myself and be of service and like figure out what I love and actually want in life, and then focusing on that and moving in that direction. And so it's not like I've stopped it being some future thing that I'm aiming or aspiring to, and being like, no, it's right now. And when I bask in that, and when I feel that now and genuinely feel that now, not just say the words, that's when I'm like a magnet for it all. And I think a huge piece for me was like this faith of just being like, I where's the source coming from, and opening to that and just having like faith in that instead of, and this is a huge thing that I've had to change and I still am always working on changing. So maybe it's an answer to the other question, is recognizing like these old patterns that I slip into where I think it's my responsibility, or I have to figure it out, or like I've looking in the past, like, oh, I could easily, and I have been like, I didn't use the opportunities I had when I had them. I could look at people and think, who were doing YouTube, and I did YouTube and now have like millions and millions of subscribers and just like so much wealth, and be like, I messed up and stuff like that. So for me, it's just like, I can't mess up. I can't carry, all of these past beliefs and who I thought I was and what money was. I can't just keep holding that. I literally have to be a different person to have a different experience. And so I feel like it's still something I'm unlearning. And it's been interesting having kids and being like, well, what stories am I sharing with them? And but where I am right now is I just feel very like certain about, not certain, just like I have a lot of faith and trust in, whatever's coming, I suppose.
It's amazing.
And do you have any advice on how to get there? I think that's the hard part. It's like, this all sounds great and I'm like so on board, and I fully agree with, you can't wait to be abundant.
You have to feel it in the
to
moment.
feel it. You got to feel it now. But how do you fake that? Or you can't even fake it. Like, how do you really embody it?
I feel like the biggest thing that helps me is slowing down. And I'm not talking about just like doing less, because there's always something I could be doing. I've got my kids with me all the time. But like, how are we being when we do the things we're doing? Because so often I feel like we're rushing to the next thing, and and I feel like that is a lack of time, a lack of presence. And it's like all of those things, it's not separate from abundance or like financial abundance. It's just like, how am I being? And so I have like reined in like the season of life I'm in. I'm like, I say no to doing so many things, and I just am like trying to slow down, even in small ways, like rushing my kids out the door to get somewhere. I'm like, do I just want to like rush them and just have a miserable time doing it? Or do I just want to like take a breath and actually be here and like take the time to like put a shoe on or do what needs to be done? And I think it's a balance, because I could do that and like literally never leave the house. But it's just like, how am I just being in the moments?
Just picture Chris waiting in the car. She's like having like the most spiritual shoe put on ceremony.
No, but this is so funny, because this is like the dynamic and the balance is so great, because he'll be like more strict, like, all right, we got to, and I'm like, gosh, a bit cranky, like, but that's the thing, if he didn't hold it together, we wouldn't go anywhere. But yeah, to answer your question, I think a huge thing for me is just appreciating things, and I have to slow down enough, and I have to like, my nervous system needs to be able to feel safe, and like I need to be nourished, because if I'm depleted and things like that, we are acting in survival states. We are more reactive in life. Like we don't have this awareness where we can respond. We're just reacting. And I feel like whenever I'm doing that, I'm just repeating the past. Like there's nothing new happening. And so when I can slow down enough to actually like learn from what's triggering me, or like see my projections, or actually just like feel my feelings, it's like, then I can create something different. But if I'm just unaware, then that's just going to be repeating the past. And so if that is continuing to happen, I'm like, well, there's something here for me to see differently. Like I definitely like to think, and birth showed me this so much. It's like, we can be, at the effect of life, like we can have it like, but life is just happening to us and we're just like reacting to it and going along with it. And we are like in a victim state. And I feel like when we can slow down and just like get our bearings, we can actually be, take responsibility for the circumstances that we find ourselves in, and actually like get curious. And I feel like, if I always like to say to myself, come to a question, not a conclusion. Like whenever I'm getting into like stories, especially like finances, like even we're talking about like you can feel like you're not getting anywhere, or especially if it's like stressful time or whatever, it's like if we come to a conclusion about, oh, this is what it means for me, this is who I am, like this is how I messed up, it's just like, okay, we're just going to continue that pattern going. But if we can ask an open question, like what do I need to see differently here? Like what does this experience have to show me? What is my role in the creation of this situation? Then I'm like, oh, we can be inspired to actually see our part. And I feel like that's
or create a new opportunity.
Yes. Yeah. And then we're like, we can step from, you know, victimhood to like we're creating as we go. And yeah.
Is your secret project a podcast? Because I could listen.
It's not.
But you have so much wisdom to share. The fact that I'm like wrapping it up and she just spits out like this like 10-minute life-changing wow.
Yeah, it was really beautiful.
Wow.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Because it's the truth, you know? It was just like, wow. You should come back with a podcast.
She comes home.
Nice.
She's like, Chris, drop the big project. We're starting a podcast.
No, it's funny. Chris has always been like, you should do a podcast. You should do a podcast. And I was like, will you do it with me? He's like, absolutely not. Like, but
he's kind of stepped away from wanting to be online, right? Is that right? Or no?
He forgets. Like he was in lots of our earlier videos, and then I think, I feel like he forgets that. I was like, you used to be in lots of stuff, but yeah, I don't know. He's sort of prefers more privacy, but if we sat down and he's just not, if he's playing with the kids, he's playing with the kids. He's not setting up a video.
Totally.
He's just, I don't think he has it in him to be like that. Whereas I happily would do that. But I feel like he can enjoy sharing things and like having a chat and stuff like that. So maybe. Yeah.
Amazing. I am super conscious of the fact that you've left your children and that this is the first time away from the littlest one. And I'm just unbelievably grateful that you said yes. Thank you for saying yes to spending this time with us. It's meant so much to me, genuinely. And like, as I'm looking here, I feel emotional because I just feel so lucky. So thank you for this time.
Oh, thank you both so much. I feel exactly, the same in return.
Beautiful. Yeah, I wanted to echo that as well. Just like immense gratitude that you would choose to spend this time with us.
Yeah.
It's really special.
So much learning from it, honestly. We're going to go back in the car and have a complete opposite conversation of like, let's go deeper next time.
What am I Googling again? Something.
Oh, cervical
sex, something? Orgasm?
Cervical. Hey, Siri, can you Google?
Cervical orgasm.
Cervical orgasm.
Well, I could go on forever, but yes, thank you for your time. And
go follow Jinti on TikTok. Who knows what's over there?
Okay.
Thanks, Jinti.
Amazing. Thank you.
All right, peace.